Over the last decade of my life, I've learned to not only be comfortable with people leaving my life, but to become grateful for those who leave my life. Now, me, just like most people, I used to have this belief that when somebody left my life, that was something wrong. It meant that I was losing something, right? There was something wrong with me when somebody left me, whether it was a friendship or a relationship, or when I broke up with somebody, it meant the loss of something. I used to believe that people no longer being in my life experience was a negative experience until now. And I've now come to the realization time and time again and seen this play out in multiple ways in multiple different types of relationships that when somebody leaves your life experience, it is not only natural, but it is a necessary part of our evolution, of our growth, of our empowerment and enlightenment as people. And I know that is hard to accept when you are in the midst of, let's say, a heartbreak, right? You've just come out of this relationship. You thought you were going to be with this person forever, and now this person walks away, or you're no longer invested in that relationship, or the relationship just dissipates. And we look at it as an issue with the relationship, therefore we internalize it as an issue with ourselves, when in truth, the real problem, the only quote unquote problem, is that we were holding on to something for far longer than we should have been in it. That's the God honest truth. The only quote unquote issue is when we stay in something believing that that thing is supposed to be forever, when nothing else in nature is forever. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to have people in your life for a lifetime. There will be some people who you have forever or close to forever for your entire livelihood. But most relationships are going to be seasonal. And a season doesn't just mean, 4 or 3 months or whatever it may be. I mean, this may be a few years. This may be a decade of your life that this person is within your life experience. However, there will come a point in time when this person is no longer in resonance with where you are, especially when you're somebody who is in this, what I call the wholeness journey or the healing journey, as most of us will call it, or you are growing and you are becoming all that you were born to be. When you're in that path, you're going to find this happening more often than not, where you find yourself in these relationships and then you outgrow them. You're in relationships and you outgrow them. Or maybe you have relationships that you had and cultivated from a young age, but all of a sudden you no longer resonate with those people. You're in a relationship, an intimate, romantic relationship with somebody, but you're just becoming somebody else. You're awakening, you're enlightening, you're becoming who you were born to be. You're becoming more and more of that person that you were created to be. You're manifesting a different life within, and that's showing itself outside of ourselves. And it's no different than, when you start to have an abundance mentality when you came from scarcity and you move from, let's say, a small little studio apartment to now you got your own home. It's the very same transition in relationships. Sometimes that relationship is that studio apartment. It cannot contain the type of individual that you're becoming. And it's not because the other person is wrong. It's not because the other person is bad. It is not the fault, quote unquote, of the other individual. It is simply that you're growing apart. And sometimes you may find people resisting this change, right? They're fighting to keep you where you are. They're fighting to have you be the same way that they remember you being. They simply do not want you to change. And it's not because of malicious intention. This is because at a subconscious level, they are afraid that you're going to leave, that you're no longer going to be with them or around them. And that takes away from their own comfort and it exposes them to their own insecurities. And the same happens to us. Like, I'm talking about, us in this experience of growth, but when we have somebody in our life who is growing and outpacing us, right? Not meaning they're better than us. It just means that they're evolving and they're continuing to open their eyes to more of life. When we have somebody in our life who is on that path and we ourselves do not choose to be on that same path of growth or our own journey of growth, on our own journey of growth, we will experience the loss of that relationship, and we might fight to keep that relationship around. We might do things that are manipulative in nature, or we might start to, argue with these individuals or shame them or guilt trip them in order to keep them around. But in truth, nothing can stay around that has passed its time. Nothing can stay around for long when it has run its course, because that is the way of the universe. That is the way of life. If you look at nature, a tree does not hold on to the same leaves for 4 seasons and another 4 seasons and another 4 seasons. It will have cycles. It will get rid of those old leaves and grow new ones and continue to do so for as long as that tree is standing. And that is us within our own lives. We will continue to renew and renew. And when we don't keep up with that process, we actually degenerate, which means if we're not growing, we are dying. Now, of course, everybody is quote unquote dying, right? Well, not quote unquote, like actually. But when you are not in a state of continuous change and evolution, and you're afraid of that change and you try to keep things as they are, you're actually going against the natural course and you suffer as a result, because you're keeping on, or you're keeping those things around you that are no longer supposed to be there. It's again like that tree keeping those leaves as tight and as close as possible. So there is a celebration that you learn to embrace when you start to step into this reality, this truth that people leaving your life is honestly one of the greatest blessings you can ever get. And for the individuals who've been in a relationship before and have had a relationship where when you got out of that relationship, the breakup happened, you were heartbroken, you thought this was going to be the worst thing that would ever happen in your life, that you would never forget this person, that, you know, this person would always occupy a part of your life, and that basically you were in ruin. However, when you look back 5 years, 3 years, maybe even a decade or more, you now realize that that was one of the best things that happened to you, right? That same relationship that you were so afraid to lose, when you look back now, it was literally the greatest thing that could have happened to you at that point in time. And you've evolved to a place where you now understand that, man, my life is incredible at this point. And if I had not made that decision, I probably would not have stepped into the person that I am right now. Again, not blaming the people around us. I'm just saying that when we try to keep ourselves in the very same spaces that we have outgrown, we begin to suffer, because we are regurgitating the very same thoughts, the very same emotions, even though, again, they no longer resonate with us. You no longer want to gossip, but you're staying in the gossip girl group. You no longer want to, overindulge and not take care of your body, and you want to start getting fit, but you're keeping yourself around those individuals, who talk smack about the skinny girls or whatever it may be, right? You continue to keep yourself in environments that you no longer represent where you're trying to go within your own experience. When you do that, you suffer every time. And so, I say this ad nauseum, I say this repetitively on purpose, is to really get this through to you, is to really hammer this point home. When you see people leaving, and sometimes it seems random, right? Man, that person I haven't talked to them in years. Or, man, I'm always trying to get together with this person, but the plans always fall through. When the universe is trying to get two people together, there is nothing that will get in that way. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I have run into individuals multitude of times who live nowhere near me, yet I have not once run into a person, let's say, who lived close to my neighborhood. That has happened to me year after year after year of my life, where I'm like, why I keep seeing this person who lives in a whole different city? Even one of my homeboys, he told me that he ran into one of his exes or somebody he was seeing or something like that in Italy. Like, he lives in America and he ran into this person in Italy in the most random place that you could run into any human beings. You're not supposed to see a human being there, but he runs into this person that he had a relationship with. And so when the universe wants to bring two people together, it will do so regardless of the external circumstances, regardless of what might be going on. So when you are in a space where you just seem to just be missing the mark with an individual, y'all just missing each other every single time, this is a representation that thing has, it's run its course, really. And that doesn't mean you have to brutally cut this person off. It doesn't mean that you got to run from the situation. It will happen naturally as a byproduct. But again, don't try to keep it together. Don't try to be the glue for something that just no longer sticks and was never meant to stick in the first place. You allow things to run their course, and it can be uncomfortable because we start to feel guilt. Like for myself, when I left life in the streets and drug dealing and addiction and things of that nature, it was harder for me to leave the people than it was the life itself or the substances itself. Like, it was more difficult for me to stop engaging and interacting with the individuals than it was to get off the drug. I was more addicted to the people because there was my identity. There was my sources of validation. There was my sources of comfort, right? I had come to know this place as home. I come to become so familiar with these individuals that to step away from it, I didn't know who I was outside of that environment. And that's what starts to happen to a lot of us. We identify ourselves with these environments. We identify ourselves with these people. We identify ourselves with these places and these situations and circumstances. But it's time for us to start outgrowing and outpacing those things. There's an analogy that came to me, and my homegirl, Carrie Nicole, actually reiterated this with her own life experience. She will share that on her platform, so make sure to follow her YouTube account, Carrie Nicole. So I was basically saying that I got this vision of individuals running on a track, right? And, well, walking on a track, let's say. So you and a friend are walking on a track. Boom, 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 right? And you see somebody running on the track and you're inspired and you think to yourself, man, like, I don't want to walk anymore. I want to run. And you tell your partner, hey, I really think we should run. And your partner says, I don't feel like running. And you tell them, come on, let's run, right? You keep probing them, let's run. And so they start to jog with you. And so y'all are jogging, but now you want to run a little faster, right? You're inspired to run. You see that you can be free and you can truly accelerate. You want to run, but your partner, they're not feeling it. As a matter of fact, they want to walk a little bit, jog a little bit, walk a little bit. Mostly they want to walk. And so you look at your partner, you think to yourself, man, like, if only I could show them that they can run too. And so you start to run and you look behind you, you run and you look behind you, run and you look behind you, and you continue to look back at your partner and you think to yourself, man, like, why are they not running? So you go back and you try to drag them and you try to convince them, not realizing that this person is choosing to walk their journey, and that is perfectly fine. You have the desire to run. You have a desire to embrace more for yourself, or what you view as more for your life. That person back there simply wants to walk the track. Maybe sometimes they want to jog, and maybe one day they're going to be inspired to run. But it's not your job to make that person run. And that's what most of us do within our relationships. We want people to be something that they're not, and frankly, they have no desire to be. Some people just want to be the complainer. Some people are comfortable being the gossiper. Some people are comfortable being the person who is a victim within their circumstance. And you say, oh, come on, there's freedom. I promise you there's freedom on the other side of victimhood. And they say to you, nah, my situation sucks. Things are terrible. And y'all, come on, let's be positive together. They don't want to be positive. That's the God honest truth. That person just does not want to be positive, and that's okay. That is their prerogative. And the best thing you can do for them is to leave them to their own devices. Allow that person to be who they are, where they are. They're on their own journey. You're on your own. And so the only way you can start to discover and uncover the truth of who you are is to allow that relationship to simply be. In most cases, it's going to dissipate. And that's what we call outgrowing a relationship, right? And of course, there are multiple signs that I could give you right now of when you're outgrowing a relationship, but really you will know. We all know when a relationship has, it's become stale in essence, right? It's run its course. And I'm not necessarily saying that, anytime a relationship is no longer on fire, or, you no longer have that burning passion, that's a problem with, the relationship dynamic. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying you will know when that relationship has run its course. And, we're oftentimes taught to kind of feel guilt for letting go of a relationship simply because we've been in the relationship for so long. We've known the person for so long. Maybe went to school together. We grew up together, right? That's the mentality I had. Man, I've known these people for 10 years. Yes, you've known them for 10 years, but you're choosing a different life at this point, and that's okay. And God bless the dead, but some of those individuals are no longer with us because they chose to continue on that life. And that was a lifestyle that they chose to indulge in, and that's a lifestyle that had consequences that ended some people up in a box, And that was not a life for me. I knew that there was so much more for me. I knew that there was more in store. I knew that God had things for me that He had placed on my heart, that the only way I could truly uncover them was to leave that environment. And so I went through the experience of mourning those losses. Before the people left this earth, I mourned the losses of just the relationship dynamic and the person that I was in context to them and the identity that I had formed. I had to grieve that, and I had to grieve the survivor's guilt, I felt guilty for leaving people behind, when in truth, If I had stayed in those environments, I could never be an inspiration. I would never be here talking to you this earnestly, having this conversation. I wouldn't even have the state of consciousness, the state of mind that I have right now to talk to you and have this conversation. And so what help would I be to anybody if I had stayed on the dope? What would I serve being a dope head as opposed to stepping away from that life, listening to my instinct and my intuition, stepping into the truth of who I am, and now being able to serve through my gift, right? And so that's what's going to happen with you. You feel terrible sometimes. You feel bad. You feel the sense of guilt for leaving that old circle of people, for leaving that old environment, for getting out the club and starting to hang out with the people who want to take hikes and, getting out the circles of the people who complain about their job and getting into the entrepreneurial groups of people inspired and motivated to do more and to build. When you start to make that shift, you actually start to become the change that you probably always wanted to see in the world. Shout out to Gandhi on that one. I don't stand behind his character completely, but I stand behind that quote right there. You start to become the individual that you always envisioned as soon as you step away from those things that are no longer in resonance with you. And I promise you, sometimes the cycles are so fast, right? It's not to say people are disposable. Nah, that's not what that's about. And I used to buy into that, right? The family member of mine told me, like, oh, you see people as disposable, but for me, it didn't sit right. And I felt so guilty about it because there were relationships that I felt no desire to continue. I felt no desire to pursue. Not realizing it's like, yeah, because you're no longer in that space of consciousness. Like a lot of them were still rooted in religion, and they're still, in these circles of dogma and indoctrination. And that was something that my soul was saying, wait a minute, come and explore a little deeper. Come and see a little more. There's more to this than you would ever know. And the only way I can show you this is when you separate yourself from that messaging, when you separate yourself from, that belief system, when you separate yourself from this environment where everybody is trying to be the same and think the same and nobody is authentic. I want to pull you into separation. And you might find that for yourself. You might find yourself in spaces of solitude where you're being pulled out of those spaces that you have become so used to. You're being pulled out of those environments and you're now feeling as if you're isolated. And I promise you that if you are in a state of isolation due to your growth, it is the greatest gift that you have received thus far. That's something I had to learn over time. When I was being pulled into spaces of solitude, it was because I was being given a gift of perspective to look at my life from a third eye or a bird's eye view, right? And when I started to look at my life in that way, I saw that the way I was living and the place that I was going, or the space that I was occupying, was not the space I was supposed to be in. And it was not a truly authentic space for me. It was not real to me. It was something that I believed I needed in order to appease those around me. I thought that I had to be a certain type of way and a certain type of person in order to be approved of, as opposed to going within, and I'm so thankful for this at this point in time, but it's like I never would have embarked on my wholeness journey, or the healing journey if it was not for this pulling away from everybody I knew and everything that I knew. And that might even mean people that you love deeply, like you care for. And I'm not saying stop caring for people. As a matter of fact, I believe once you step away from those relationships, you can actually care for people so much more because you no longer have this resentment towards them holding you back, right? You can just simply love that person. And by love, I mean wishing the best for them, wishing the highest good for that individual. And once you start to have that desire and intention for others, even from a distance, you're going to have a greater effect on their lives than you would staying in that space, right? If you're trying to help an addict get off of drugs, what good are you doing them if you're hanging out with them, smoking the same dope, shooting up the same heroin? What good are you doing that individual when you are engaging in the very same thing that you're trying to pull them away from? And that's something I even have to realize in that old circle that I came out of. It's like I'm trying to tell these people, man, these things that you're doing right now are going to be destructive to your life. But yet I'm still hanging out with them and I'm still basically engaging them in it. And I'm still being an enabler in those spaces. It was not until I said, you know what, I'm through, that a few of them were able to recognize maybe there's more for my life. And so that's the message that I have for you today. It's a little bit of a longer message, but I believe it's a necessary one for us, regardless of where we are within our lives, is to remember that people being stripped away from your life is not them being taken from you. It's not a loss. It is not a loss. I know that there is a grieving process, but the grieving process, is oftentimes prolonged when we have a belief that something was stripped or taken from us, as opposed to this thing just simply ran its course. Like maybe the tree cries when it loses those leaves, but eventually it has to recognize that new and more fruitful, more bountiful leaves are going to appear. And that's the mentality that I take with life. Appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen in. Quick little shameless plug. I just recently released this book right here, my first published book. It's titled Doing Me Guilt Free. And I'm going to make sure to drop the link below in the description. So make sure you get yourself a copy of this. Doing Me Guilt Free by Aquarius Wave. This is my very first publication. I'm extremely proud of it. Yeah, it's a book that I needed just as much as I believe anybody else who picks it up needs this at this very moment in time. I wish I had this when I was 7 years old and 17, 27, and then the rest of the sevens to go up. Love you guys. Appreciate you. Peace.